Welcome back. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi is calling the mainly maskless gathering at Nkandla an act of treason. He also condemned the crowd for the direct attacks on the state. The former president, Jacob Zuma, laughed it all yesterday, saying he can't be held responsible for the actions of his supporters. Let's bring in political analyst Gogo Aubrey Matshiqi to chat to us about what transpired in Nkandla yesterday. Togoza Gogo, thank you so much for making time on the lead this afternoon. So the former president's supporters were clad in their cultural regalia, some of them at least. Some of them are members of Amabuthu. I was listening to the comments by some of the supporters who seemed to be supporting the former president on the basis of him being a Zulu man. We are supporting one of our own. That's what some of them said. What are the consequences of this kind of support, which has tribalistic elements?
Well, Thokozakhe, what we must bear in mind is that what we have been witnessing, in part, is an exercise in political communication. And the aim of political communication is to alter the political environment to one's advantage or the group one represents, and to the disadvantage of opponents or political enemies. And to achieve those goals, there are several means by which you can do so. Now, if we look at what happened yesterday, we must go back to the period prior to the Polokwane conference of the ANC in 2007, when those who supported Jacob Zuma would wear T-shirts written 100% Zulu man. In other words, one of the things that were deployed in that battle and will be deployed in this battle is a very narrow Zulu nationalist impulse. What you do is to foreground the perception that it is not a single man, Jacob Zuma, who is under attack, but he is under attack because he is a Zulu man, and therefore the Zulu nation itself is under attack.
Wow. I'm actually just reflecting on what you are saying there, Gogo Matshiqi. Quite extraordinary that the former president then is exploiting that. Because I would like to believe he's very much aware of what he's doing. He knows the support that he enjoys in the province. He's a proud Zulu man. As you say, this is not the first time that this kind of strategy is being employed. And hence, even the supporters on the ground are saying, Ubaba wetu, this is one of us. So they are, in fact, portraying what you're explaining now, that they're not looking at just one man who's under attack. They're looking at one man who's Zulu, and therefore it is that, even that culture that is under attack.
Yes, but he will say, I am not exploiting this. Those who came in my support did so voluntarily and were under no compulsion to express themselves in the cultural manner that they did. I suppose his opponents or his detractors would say he was in a position, he still is in a position, to make sure that a Zulu nationalist impulse, a narrow Zulu nationalist impulse, is not the means by which this political communication will take place. It is therefore interesting that from yesterday, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has been bemoaning the fact that, first of all, Amabuthu, who had gathered in Nkandla, did not have permission from the king. Now, again, go back to the period prior to the Polokwane conference and after Jacob Zuma is elected president of the ANC. Now, the Zulu nationalist impulse on which the IFP itself had relied became a problem when a leader of the ANC begins to benefit from it. And therefore, you have two bulls in the Zulu nationalist impulse crop. And that is why you see this former IFP leader, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, comes out in what he believes is in defense of the Zulu nation and maybe the Zulu monarch who, in his words, did not give permission for this to happen. But bear in mind that at the time of the funeral of King Gogo Aubrey, tensions did develop between Amabutho, or some sections of Amabutho, and Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. In my view, those tensions are going to deepen because his local standard, first of all, as the traditional prime minister of the Zulus, and therefore one who can speak as he does now about what Amabutho said, is being questioned, not only by sections of Amabutho, but by some members of the Zulu royal house.
What are the consequences of these tensions then deepening and what we saw on display yesterday, especially in the context of what happened before in that province with the political violence that was witnessed in the past?
Well, they are very dangerous. The implications are very dangerous, Clement, because what you are seeing already is a convergence between three things. Firstly, internal ANC conflicts are becoming part of the Nkandla dynamic, which is part of the Zulu royal house dynamic. So you are going to have the conflict in the ANC, the Nkandla imbroglio, and tensions inside the Zulu royal house becoming part of the same dynamic. What I call the convergence of these forces becoming a perfect storm. A perfect storm whose epicenter, by the way, will become KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. And the reason why we must be concerned is that peace in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng, after the violence between supporters of the ANC and the IFP in the 80s and early 90s, was achieved without a disarmament program. What it means, therefore, is that we have arms caches in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng lying around that may be accessed if those who have the power and the influence to make choices that do not escalate the situation do not do so. So the responsibility of Jacob Zuma, leaders of the ANC, leaders of the IFP, and members of the Zulu Royal House, is to make sure that their free will and the free will of their members and their choices are not exercised in a manner that leads into the political temperature rising and imposing a climate of instability, not only on the two provinces I've spoken about, but the country as a whole.
I picked up a number of concerns when he addressed his supporters, Gogo Matshiqi. Obviously, victimhood, obviously tribalism that you've extensively addressed, but also sexism. Did you hear what he said about Thuli Madonsela? He referred to her as intokazi ebukekayo nje. I mean, how do you even, I don't even know how you translate that in English.
Well, I was hoping, Clement, no one will ask me that question. Because it's what it's a cause we call ukukwekwa. And this is Zulu, we call it ukukwekwa, to say something indirect. In saying intokazi ebukekayo, he is saying the opposite, that she is not good looking. And therefore, you are right. There is an extent to which patriarchy, conscious or otherwise, is also being deployed as part of this exercise in political communication to alter the political environment to his advantage.
What responsibility does he have as a leader to denounce the disregard of the rule of law, which was displayed so vividly outside his home yesterday? Or is that too much to ask from a former president who, as you say, is employing this political communication that has elements of tribalism, that has elements of toxic patriarchy and sexism?
Remember, Clement, why we are here. We are here because this country is governed by a ruling party that speaks with all sides of its mouth. This is the same party, the ANC, which actually delivered the Zuma moment? How many times was there an attempt to put former President Jacob Zuma out of office in Parliament? And how many times did the ANC act in its defense? Should we therefore take as credible the statements that are coming out of an ANC that is complicit in creating the conditions that we find in the current moment? So ordinarily, the ruling party should be taking the lead. And therefore, their decision to cancel the NEC meeting during the past weekend was the wrong one, because there is a need for the party to have strategic conversations about Nkandla, because Nkandla is located within a broader moment with social, political, and economic implications.
Yeah.
Former President Jacob Zuma himself does have the responsibility to take positions that will not escalate the situation to the detriment of the country. And as I said, to the extent that you are going to see a convergence between the four storms I spoke about, there is also a responsibility on the Zulu royal house to provide leadership and direction. Because if they fail, and the ANC continues to fail, and Jacob Zuma continues to fail, they are going to plunge the country into a crisis.
Someone indicated, in fact, yesterday that, the former president knows that he's going down. He can see that. It's quite clear. But he's so intent on taking down the fabric of the society with him. What do you think should be the ANC's approach? The NEC is meeting today. What approach is best for this political party to take? And what reflections do they need to make? They gave the country this man. They voted and elected him when he was facing scandals. They defended him in the face of other political scandals. So they've known for a while. What reflections should they be making as they decide how to best respond to the developments in Nkandla?
Unfortunately, Clement, the ANC is not equal to that task. In terms of the moral high ground, the ANC at leadership level is a vacuum, is a vacant space. In addition to that, I've been talking about what I call Ispogi Sempugani, the ghost of a fly. So you have this fly that is caught in a spider's web. And when you look at it, the body is intact. What you don't see is that the spider has hollowed it out. We are therefore looking at the ghost of a fly, no longer the fly itself. Who and what are the ghosts of the fly in South Africa today? I will venture to say it is the ANC and its leadership. And to some extent, our democratic dispensation is moving in that direction, to the extent that what it promises and what it delivers are two different things. So when we go back to the theme of political communication, we must bear in mind that words are not what they describe. The word cat is not a cat. And therefore the statements we are going to hear, either coming from Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi or coming from the leadership of the ANC or coming from former President Jacob Zuma, the challenge is to make sure that those words come closer to what they seek to describe. In other words, what you must see is the bridging of the gap between the words and what they describe. But if I am correct in saying we're dealing with the ghosts of a fly, then we must not hold our breath. The ANC is not equal to this task.
That's actually a frightening reflection there. Thank you so much for making time, Gogo Aubrey Matshiqi, always for your great analysis and helping us understand these political developments.